Hello, Outfest audience. Thank you so much for joining us at the Q&A session over Zoom for Tahara, the wonderful, witty Tahara. I am thrilled to be here with the director, writer, cast, and crew of the film. My name is Daniel Crook. I'm the programming coordinator here at Outfest. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I am delighted to be here with this amazing group. So to kick things off, I would love if y'all could all just go one by one. Don't worry if we accidentally speak over each other at first. I know we're still getting used to digital everything, even 5 months into this thing. But if you could let our audience know your name, your role in the film, your pronouns, and anything else that you want to say as an introduction, and then we'll jump into some more probing questions.
Okay, sure. So I'm Olivia Peace. I'm the director of Tahara. My pronouns are she and they. Nothing extra to say. I'm just excited to be here, excited for Outfest.
Hi, I'm Jess Seidman. I'm the writer and one of the producers of Tahara. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And yeah, I'm so excited to be a part of this and I can't wait to Q&A.
I'm Madeline. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I play Carrie, and I'm just so happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Rachel Sennett. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I play Hannah in the film, and I'm really excited to be here too.
Hi, I'm Troy. I'm lead editor for the film. My pronouns are he, him, his. And yeah, just very excited. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really delighted, like I said, to be able to have this conversation with all of you. It's such a wonderful film. What struck me the first time I watched it is just what a very particular milieu it is to explore these questions of coming of age, of identity, of friendship. And so I guess my first question would be for both Jess and Olivia, just about why was it this particular lens on that coming of age story? Why a Hebrew school on a day of mourning after a suicide? So Jess, I'm sort of curious the genesis of the idea for you, and then Olivia, how you got involved and what appealed to you in the script.
Awesome, great question. I wrote this film as part of a course I took at Northwestern University, a screenwriting course taught by fellow Outfest alum Stephen Cohn. Shout out to Stephen. And the class was called Writing the Micro Budget Feature, and I gave myself those sort of micro budget limitations by setting one location. And when I was thinking about what kind of story I wanted to tell, I was definitely interested in sort of a toxic female friendship. I myself was sort of kind of going through and thinking of my own queer identity. And I realized I'd never seen any movie about Hebrew school. I grew up raised conservative Jewish in Rochester, New York, where we filmed Tahara, in the actual temple where we filmed Temple Bethel, yeah. And I went to Hebrew school 3 days a week for my entire childhood, and I'd never seen a movie that talked about sort of that like American Jewish teenage experience of having this sort of religious education outside of secular education, where you're with people, some of them your best friends from regular school, and some of them just people that you are now sort of in this like group with. So I was really interested in those dynamics, and that's sort of what led me to want to tell this story in that specific place.
And as far as how I got attached to it, so Jess, Madison Ginsburg, and Dasha Gorin, the other two producers, all went to Northwestern together, and I went to Northwestern too. So I guess like you all saw my work while I was there, and then reached out over email, and then I read the script. I got to a scene in particular that, spoiler alert, has a zit in it. And that was the one where I saw a lot of myself in it. I think initially where I was like, oh, I know exactly how to do this. So we had like a 3-hour call. It was just me and Jess, where I said, okay, what do you think about animation? Doing a 1:1 aspect ratio. I want Carrie to be Black in particular. And Jess is just so generous with the script and with giving me, some creative control on this. And yeah, now here we are.
I love that you mentioned the zit scene, especially as the moment you were in. I feel like when you're watching the movie too, when you watch that zit scene, you're like, okay, so this movie's gonna go there, not just in some like difficult emotions surrounding the toxic friendship, like you mentioned, Jess, but there's also going to be sort of this melange of different modes of humor. We're even gonna go in the gross out direction as much as we are sort of this bone dry, like lethally funny sense of wit. And question for Rachel and Madeline. So how did y'all get involved in the process? And when it came to filling out and fleshing out rather your two characters, how did you approach that sense of these two characters are involved in a lifelong friendship, and this might be the last day of that friendship?
Okay, I'll go first. I initially taped for this and then I auditioned, and I had a similar experience where I read the script and the zit scene, and then I don't want to give it away, but one of the final scenes, there was dialogue where I was like, this is exactly how a teenager talks. It doesn't like it's so awkward and it's so honest, and like and I just like read it and I was like, oh my god, I love it. And then the friendship, I like, and I feel like Maddie, you can speak on this too, but we really just like clicked. And yeah, we just like hung out the first night. We never met. We met the day before we started shooting, and we got dinner and just like talked. And yeah, and I think we just got closer during the film, but there was just like a natural closeness, which was great for the friendship. It is sad that now you're like the last day of the friendship. I was like, oh yeah, but it was really fun, like doing it together.
Yeah, it was so cool to like kind of like build our friendship as we were filming, because when we went and showed up to set and to work, the scenes were just so much more organic, because we were like, oh, like, yeah, and then we're gonna run the scene the next night and watch Game of Thrones, and you know, it was just like fun because it was like we're friends, they're friends. But like Rachel, I taped for the role and then went in for an in-person callback, and I remember reading the script, and like that last scene when they're in the library, no spoilers, but that last scene that they're in the library, I like had this huge moment where I was like warped back to like some like traumatic day, like my sophomore year of high school or something. And I was like, I've never seen like that specific, like such dramatic, like really high stakes teenage drama captured so well. And I think that was one of the things that drew me to the project.
Maddie, I love the way you said that, and I agree completely. That's something that struck me the first time I watched the movie, is how it is just so perfectly calibrated to those extremely high stakes for everything when you're a teenager. Like almost immediately you get warped into that world. So I want to go back to something Olivia said about that decision to shoot in the 1-to-1 ratio. When I first watched the film, I'm like, oh, they're shooting in the Academy ratio. I'm like, no, I think this is the Instagram ratio actually, right? And also the decision to incorporate animation. I mean, multiple modes of animation too. You've got the claymation, the hand-drawn. And I would love to hear more about those decisions. And Troy, as the editor, when you were presented with all of these different pieces like that, what were the challenges for you to make sure it all continued to flow? Because the film has such a wonderful, zippy sense of rhythm to it. And I know that must have been a challenge as well.
I'll start, and then I'm going to kick it to Troy and make him talk. So, as far as animation, so I actually started as a filmmaker, as an animator initially. And part of that is just because with animation, you can really make whatever you want. And that's, where I learned things like coverage and all the sort of directorial decisions I learned first as an animator. So kind of beyond that, like everything I've ever done past like my first short, which is entirely animated, has had like animated elements into it. So that's kind of where that came from. But then for this particular film, I wanted to bring on an animator instead of me doing everything myself. So we brought on my friend Emily Ann Hoffman, who did a beautiful job like designing the puppets that are in the claymation sequence and doing the rotoscoping for those like kind of psychedelic sequences. And then you asked about the aspect ratio. So yeah, I like that you called it the Instagram aspect ratio. That's the first time I've heard that, but that's exactly what it is. This film is really heavily influenced by and inspired by actual teens and teens on Instagram. Like, I'm not a very social media type person, but I am a lurker. And that 1:1 aspect ratio, I think, was something that I had not seen before in a film at the time. Our cinematographer, Tahila DeCastro, since showed me Xavier Dolan's film, Mommy, and a couple of other ones. But at the time, it was really just Instagram. And I was really interested in seeing how a tight framing could make our characters feel really isolated. So really, you can only fit like really 1.5 persons in a frame that small. And so it kind of makes everyone feel very alone on screen. Which, I mean, as a teenager, that's kind of how it feels, you know, you have that really tight perspective on everything. And then Troy actually came on. I'd actually started my MFA at USC. So in the morning, I would go to my MFA classes. And at night and in the late afternoon, I would edit this movie in the basement of USC. And then Troy came on a vacation. Troy came to Los Angeles on vacation, was supposed to be having a fun little time, and then took over the editing of this film and just like took it to a whole new level. So I don't know, Troy, if you want to say something about that.
I know, but yeah, no, it was definitely a process because, like, I guess originally I came on like a couple weeks before filming, and like Olivia had like discussed like the visual ideas, and I talked with Olivia and Tahila, the DP, and it was really interesting, like the aspect ratio and the animation. So I was able to actually like to be on set every day and build a first cut on set. So that was like very helpful because yeah, just like me, Olivia, and Tahila would sit down and go through it, like adjust an aspect ratio, because I know like yeah, it was definitely like they had a lot of visual ideas, but it was also like the performances, yeah, Madeline and Rachel's, watching that, because especially as the film progresses, it becomes about like that like aspect ratio becomes more isolating and lingering on their faces. And I know Olivia and Tahila would sometimes like they eschewed traditional coverage and just like decide to stick with one actress the whole time. So I definitely figuring out on set, and then also like further in editing, just choosing what to show in this moment and who to isolate.
Yeah, Troy was just totally a lifesaver on that note too. Like, I don't know if there's other indie filmmakers watching this, like having an editor on set really will save you some time and money. We had only 15 days to shoot the entire thing. So having Troy on set, we were able to see immediately like what worked and what didn't. He was super patient with us about that as well. But by the time we wrapped, we actually had our assembly already made.
That is a dream. That's like, I mean, that's what they teach you in film school, right? I mean, so many times that person who's your script supervisor is also your editor. So they're getting that on-set perspective, but it's so rare, I feel like, to hear from folks that the editor is on set like Troy was. That's fantastic. And that's such a short time frame to shoot this thing. I mean, like Jess was saying, it was written under an expectation of limitations in that one location, for instance. But I got the sense that there must have been some type of rehearsal process between Rachel and Maddie, because y'all are just so precise with your comic timing. I mean, like I said earlier, it is just lethal. And I often think about the scene, Rachel, where you tell the mother of your deceased classmate, when she's like, "What's that one song, Annie? The Tomorrow one?" You're like, "Tomorrow." Like that level of timing, did you rehearse? I mean, or did you really just go in and shoot it? Because if so, color me even more impressed.
Well, Rachel is so funny. Like, I feel like it's so easy to act with Rachel because she's giving so much. So it's like, okay, like let me just sit here as scary and like react. But yeah, and we rehearsed, I think, like the day before, like a lot.
I was gonna say okay, also thank you, Maddie. Yeah, we would rehearse, we talked about the scenes with Olivia, and then I feel like sometimes, especially those like big meaty scenes where there was like so much, we would like be in the dressing room and be like, okay, let's like work and run it and stuff, and run it with Olivia. And we also both would like improv a little, and I feel like we got we just were comfortable with each other. I mean, there's one scene where the the scene where it turns to animation when we kiss, we had, I mean, the bathroom scene, it's like one of my favorite scenes, but it's like a long scene, and we had, I mean, there's a pimple pop, and for the kiss, Maddie and I had to like be frozen, like not kissing, just like frozen kissing for while the camera went around us. And that I was like, I'll breathe out my nose and then you breathe in yours, which honestly now it's like in Corona so far away from, I almost miss it. I'm like,
it was like day 2 also. It was
yeah.
like, okay, nice to meet you, let's kiss for 15 minutes.
It was, so I just feel like it was like we just were able to like work to, with Olivia and figure it all out. It was fun.
Yeah.
And Olivia, question for you. Something Rachel said earlier stuck out to me about how you almost forget that this might be the last day of this friendship. There's sort of a broken heart at the center of this thing. We have we have a major betrayal from one friend to the other, as the one friend played by Maddie as Carrie, sort of having this day of like a real spiritual awakening, right? So as a director, how are you working to maintain balancing those tones? The fact that we do have some hilarious writing from Jess, and then some great visual gags like the zit. I love that you hold on one shot for that too. How do you balance those moments with the more sobering and heartbreaking moments of this broken friendship?
I think a lot of it has to do with like in pre-production and even in like the rewriting process, like Jess and I mapped character arcs for every single character that you see on screen. And I think that really helped to inform like the performances that I would then ask for. Like Maddie and Rachel's characters of Carrie and Hannah especially have pretty detailed backstories, some of which like don't even make it on screen. So we would just kind of talk about that beforehand. And then going into shoot, we would just get different takes, like kind of a lot of takes looking back on it, of just different styles of delivering lines, so that by the time we got into the edit with Troy, like we could pick out exactly how we wanted things to land and who exactly we wanted to be looking at when it did land. But yeah, I think between Maddie and Rachel, like we got this really great, honest portrayal of this friendship. And I think initially on set, I really wanted to shoot everything as it actually happens, like from beginning to end. But because of like the synagogue was under construction, we kind of had to end up shooting, I think, the first scene and then the last scene. And I remember being so worried about that, but then yeah, Rachel and Maddie just killed it. So yeah, we got really lucky.
So when you say that you and Jess provided backstories for all the characters in the films, do you mean like sort of the entire ensemble? Because even though, we've got Carrie and Rachel here at the very heart of the story, I love how much attention you pay as well to the characters on the periphery, the characters who are eating weed brownies in synagogue, and then the other girls in the class. What was what was your approach to those tertiary and secondary characters as well? Because they really, even though the story is not really about them, I do feel like I know who each of those people are.
As Olivia said, we had this really long phone call where Olivia had a whiteboard and we were on FaceTime, I guess, and we just went through every single character and we're like, what's their arc for the day? Because I think so much of the story I'm trying to capture, and then we ultimately all did as a team, is sort of this idea that like when you're a teenager, one day can make like a huge difference. It can feel so heavy and real. And I think they all went in with this expectation that the day was going to be sad, they were going to be moved in a certain way, or maybe they weren't, and that's kind of like their F you, like I'm dealing with my grief this way thing. And so Olivia and I really went through and thought, as we were getting into this pre-production mindset of like, who are we going to cast? How is the production design going to look? Everything. And just thought like, where did these characters start and where do they finish at the end of this day? And I think something that happens a lot in teen movies is the idea of, character trope and composite. And I definitely think of this film as an homage to that world, but also a breaking of that mold. You know, I want the teenagers to be like, there are the stoners and the mean girls and whatever, but it's also like Hebrew school, and the friendships are not that deep, and they are that deep. So it's fun to play around with those. But the most important thing is making sure everyone has a journey to go through. Because if you can think about it as if like you're in the universe of the world that we created, like this is a big day.
And I also like to say, like, we really, between Avery, our costume designer, and Claire, our makeup artist, like, tried really hard to really distinctly set everyone in high school. So we gave everyone like really specific makeup. We gave Hannah's character a zit that like grows over time and then like bursts, and then like is kind of sitting there like crusty. And so Claire, the makeup artist, made all these zit prosthetics like for the whole day. And yeah, like each makeup look, each costuming choice is like really specific and distinct for each character, and I think kind of helped to inform how they played ultimately throughout the day.
And I think the color palette is so beautiful in this movie too. It has sort of this like wintry pall over everything, which is so fitting for like this sort of inflection point in the friendship. It's darkest before the dawn, I guess. But we're almost out of time here, so I wanted to ask everybody a question that's a little general, and you can take it in an earnest way, or you can treat it in a silly way, whatever you want. But what is it that you learned about yourself as an artist while making this film, either as an actor, a director, a writer, an editor? What's one lesson you learned throughout the process of the film? It's a toughie.
I want to go last. Yeah, I want to go last.
Well, Olivia, I think you've spoken so much. I think you deserve a little time before coming back on this answer, right?
I have an answer, I think. Okay, going in with bold confidence. I think I learned that you want to like have your choices ready to go, but you also want you need to both be like so sure in your choices, but you also need to be ready to try anything else. And I think the two scenes that I would use as examples are the bathroom scene. There's so much action, and Olivia is such a great director and really had like a clear, it was almost like a separate script of the actions that I do of like being on the couch with Maddie, getting up, going to the mirror, turning back. And I was like, okay, I better know what my character is doing, because now I'm thinking about when do I touch the tissue. And then on the other side, the library scene, that was one of the scenes that I first auditioned for. And I think it was just so locked in my head as this one way. And we did it, and Olivia would say like just a different, like trying it like this, trying it like that, and then all this other like better stuff came out because I was trying it in a different way than I had done it like or rehearsed it so many times.
I'll go next. I think from this experience shooting the film, I learned, like as an actor, I learned how to kind of direct myself in a kind way. I think before all this, you know, when you're like going to an audition or like self-taping, you're like getting on set and it's like very high pressure. You're just kind of like, just do it. And it's like very cerebral, and you're like kind of yelling, like, why aren't you doing the thing? And I got past that point to being able to like tell myself, or like really clearly know how to do the scene. Because when Olivia was directing, like it would be like a conversation. Like she would be like, let's talk about it. And we would have a conversation. And it was almost like, oh, okay, well, let me go back and do the scene. But these are my ideas. It was like we had a conversation, and her style of direction is so effective and so like gentle that it really just opened up my world of acting and speaking to myself in a kind way that is so like invaluable.
I guess circling back to your last question, definitely just like what struck me throughout is like how rich and like detailed the world Jess and Olivia created, and especially like being able to be on set and then editing later is just like, that was definitely a gift in terms of seeing like how much every single thing mattered. Like from Maddie and Rachel's, like to the subtleties of their performance. So like Olivia mentioned earlier, like there was literally construction going on through the synagogue, and like most of the scenes have drilling noises in reality. And so the producers building that and able to basically build this world where none of that is seen. It's just this very intentional thing was definitely a gift to see and learn throughout.
I love this question. I love everyone's answers. I'm like geeking out majorly. I'm going to answer this as a writer and also as one of the producers of the film, and shout out to my other two producers, Madison Ginsburg and Dasha Gorin, who we mentioned earlier. I think they would agree with this answer. Hopefully, we'll see. Don't give up. I feel like that's like what I learned as an artist. Don't give up. Like the construction, getting everybody to Rochester, we had to make a light out of a pan, like a buffet sheet, like aluminum pan. We had to like change the shooting schedule. We also got to like go to Niagara Falls for fun. Like there's all these things we got to do because we're also artists and people and humans making something huge together that's also like small and, you know, intimate. And there were so many points where I think you could so be like, this is too much, but it's like, don't give up, because everyone you're working with is so rooting for you and there for you. And that's like, I think hearing everybody, you know, kind of say so many sweet things about the script has really just like been this current of energy that like keeps me going as a producer. I've never produced anything before this, so this has been like a real trip, and it's been amazing to grow as an artist and know that like the hardest part is staying in it. And if you surround yourself with good people, and everyone who worked on this film is good people, like we really like will keep going and like make something that we're excited about and get to share with other people.
Oh, that was sweet. Wow, these are all really good answers. I guess like similar to what everyone's been saying, like I think the big thing that I learned was to prepare and then trust. So, you know, we did so much preparation, like every single person on this set was doing their own job and more than their job, which is, you know, kind of just the world of indie filmmaking. And there was a lot of details and preparation. Like we had a pitch deck that I made that like, had all these ideas in it. But even still, like the night before the shooting, we were going to shoot the first day, I found myself Googling like how to direct, like, you know, which is just kind of, I think, this like nervous energy that comes with being an artist and like feeling that responsibility. But in the edit, like I ended up finding organically all these ideas that I had set out to do in the very beginning, like with that pitch deck, where I just kind of like forgot that I had set out to do them in the first place. So yeah, like trusting the people that you've chosen, like trusting the friends that you've brought along the way. Yeah, it turned out.
I think that's a beautiful answer. These are all amazing answers. I'm always hoping people will go a little earnest with the question. So thank you for me, but then also thank you for the audience for speaking your truth there. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on the Q&A. Thank you for bringing Tahara to life and sharing it with our Outfest audience. I've never seen a coming of age story, a teenage movie quite like this one. I find myself thinking about it all the time. And I'm just so thankful to all of you, all your individual contributions to bring this thing together. And I know that a lot of folks in the audience are going to feel the same way. So thank you all so much. And Rachel, I think we'll be seeing you at the Shiva Baby Q&A one of these days.
Yeah, I know. I was like, maybe I'll see you again in like 4 days, something like that.
I know. I think Rachel is like the unofficial mascot of Outfest Los Angeles this year. But thank you all so much, and congratulations on the film. It really is a great piece of work, and I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to chat with you about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.